So far in the 2025 NFL season, you guys have heard my thoughts and opinions of a lot of different teams and players. But now it's time to hear your guys' thoughts and hot takes so far through 5 weeks of the 2025 NFL season. Subscribe and like the video if you do go on to enjoy. Let's hop into it. Patriots are dark horse playoff contenders and the Bucks are dark horse Super Bowl contenders. So this is coming off the backs of the Patriots upsetting the Bills on Sunday Night Football and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers coming off a very impressive victory versus a very good Seattle Seahawks football team. Look, I think that this is a not really big hot take. I do think the Bucks being Super Bowl contenders could be considered one, but in totality, look, the Patriots are improving. They are improving, and they're improving fast. Not just getting better week by week, but they're taking big general steps forward. This game versus the Buffalo Bills, in my opinion, opened the eyes of a lot of fans out there just to how good Drake May is. And I put a tweet out about it that we saw the maturity of this young quarterback really elevate in a huge high-stakes situation. We're talking about a Patriots team going on Sunday Night Football in a whiteout game in Buffalo with one of the rowdiest crowds, and they handled that game. They won that game. They frankly, they kind of dominated in some ways. So yes, the Patriots, if they can continue that level of play moving forward with Stephon Diggs playing at that level, with Drake May playing at that level, I think they could make the playoffs, especially with how weak the AFC is this year. Now, when it comes to the Buccaneers side of things, I totally think it is possible. Baker Mayfield is playing at like a borderline MVP level, and if he continues to play up this high of a level, assuming they can get healthier at some point with Mike Evans returning and other guys just managing to stay healthy, I do think this Buccaneers offense is good enough to get them to that point. I think they have some pieces defensively. Antoine Winfield Jr., of course, Vita Vea. They got a couple pass rushers that are fun. I still think they're kind of lacking experience in their, some of their pieces. Mainly guys like Benjamin Morrison, who are probably going to be asked to play a big role, and some of those other secondary members. But in general, I look at that Bucs team and think they have a recipe for success. And if we assume a team maybe like Philadelphia takes a bit of a step back, with the Rams being a little bit up and down right now, I could see the Buccaneers potentially making a bit of a run. I don't think they're going to make the Super Bowl. I would probably still put my money on some other teams in the NFC, but I think the Bucs have to at least be in the conversation because they've looked really good so far this year. Jonathan Taylor should be in MVP talks. Why is it always got to be a quarterback? With Bills lost, Colts just become #1 seed in AFC, and no one even thought they were a contender. Yes, I know it's early in season, but still. I have always been somebody that has said that it doesn't have to always be a quarterback to win MVP. However, in order for somebody to be an MVP that is not a quarterback, they have to have such an astounding, impressive season where he's basically the only reason why that team is winning. And for the Colts, I don't know if that's really the case. Daniel Jones is playing at such a high level. Who would have thought? We'll talk about him here in just a little bit more detail, but I don't think it's Jonathan Taylor that is the catalyst of this team that is carrying them to victories. Yes, he is a huge part of that team, but you also have to look at, again, Daniel Jones, the weapons, Tyler Warren, the coaching staff, the offensive line, etc., etc. And because I think there's just enough great quarterback play out there right now, I do think it will eventually become a quarterback who wins MVP. There's just so many guys that are playing at such high levels at the quarterback position. And let's be honest, the quarterback position is by far and away the hardest position in the entirety of sports. And so when you are a good quarterback, you are the reason why your team is also a good team. So I don't think Jonathan Taylor should be in MVP talks, though I do think he's definitely one of the front runners to win Offensive Player of the Year. It's Jonathan Taylor, it's Puka Nacua, and that's really it. I think those two guys are kind of going for a 1-2 finish there for Offensive Player of the Year, assuming they can keep it up. But yeah, Jonathan Taylor is playing at a very high-end elite level. He's going to be an all-pro by the end of the season. He's having a great year. But yeah, I don't think he should be in MVP talks just because there's so many great quarterback play out there, and quarterback is just such a hard position that, is the reason why their teams win. As far as I'm concerned, Jalen Hurts is doing just fine. Great even. With the little opportunities he gets when Petula's coordinating this offense, Petula needs a mini bye week to be better. If that isn't possible, we're looking at yet another offensive coordinator. Man, I miss Steichen. Him and Fangio would be unstoppable. So I have a couple thoughts on this one. For starters, I do agree with you. I think Jalen Hurts is playing fine football. I wouldn't call it great. I wouldn't even call it good for the most part. I think he's playing fine. I also think the offensive coordinator has to step his game up too, because he's not adjusting their offense to what defenses have made adjustments with. You're seeing more zone defense. You're seeing them stack the box. And it's been really difficult for Philadelphia to run the football. And so they've been very one-dimensional. They can't attack the zones. But I also do think this. Yes, Petula is the main guy who we should be blaming. But I also do think Jalen Hurts does deserve some of the blame. And it really isn't that I think Hurts is a bad quarterback or anything like that. I think he was in my top 5 preseason. He wouldn't be in my top 5 now, but he was. I personally believe that when you have a guy like Jalen Hurts, he does come with a little bit of flaws to his game. He's an elite athlete. He can move well in the pocket. He's got a very good arm. He can be generally accurate for most of the time. But he isn't also somebody that's going to dissect a defense like, let's say, for example, a Patrick Mahomes or a healthy Joe Burrow. Those are guys that can use their eyes to create plays downfield. They make big, tight window throws, and you just don't see Jalen Hurts do that. A lot of Hurts' big, explosive plays down the field are, seam shots, or deep balls to A.J. Brown or Devontae Smith, especially this year. How many times have we seen Jalen Hurts drop back and throw into a super tight window on a 3rd and long? It just hasn't happened a bunch this year. I feel like Hurts has been a little bit indecisive at times, especially in a position where you have to be very decisive and you have to be very anticipatory. Again, I don't want to put most of the blame on Hurts, but I do think Hurts has to shoulder some of the blame for some of the offense's inefficiencies so far. Obviously, so does Saquon Barkley for not being effective in the run game, but I also think that goes back to the offensive coordinator. In terms of the hierarchy of who you blame for why this Eagles offense has not been good, I think starters, you got to go with the head coach, the offensive coordinator as that big reason why. And then I think Jalen Hurts is probably the second reason why you should, have a bit concerns about this offense. I think Hurts is a good quarterback, and I think he's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, especially in the playoffs. But he has to figure it out and has to figure out new ways to open up this offense, because this team kind of gives me some 2023 vibes. Not as bad. They're not going to collapse like that team did because they're just so talented, but they give me some vibes similar to that, where the coordinator play is very shaky and they just never can figure it out. Baker is top 5. I'm assuming he means Baker's a top 5 quarterback in the league, and look, I have a hard time disagreeing with him right now. You look at the numbers, you look at the team's success, he's playing at such an elite high-end level. One of the major knocks on Baker Mayfield in the past couple years has been the turnovers. I mean, he had, I think, over 15 interceptions last year. I think this year he only has like a couple, maybe one, I think. Baker's playing good. He's just taking care of the football. He's getting the ball out to his playmakers. I mean, without Mike Evans for a couple games now, without Chris Godwin to start the season off, man, he's been dicing these teams up, whether it's Emeka Egbuka, Mike Evans when he was healthy, Chris Godwin now. I mean, he's getting the ball out to his playmakers. They're making plays for him. The run game's been good. Even behind an offensive line that's dealt with a ton of injuries, I think Baker Mayfield is playing at a super high elite level. And when you talk about the MVP conversation, which we talked about earlier with Jonathan Taylor, you got to have Baker Mayfield firmly in the conversation. I still think Josh Allen is probably your front runner just because big name, won it last year, great team success, great statistics. I still think he's probably your front runner. But if it's not going to be Josh Allen, man, I think Baker Mayfield has a strong conversation to be there because it's not going to go to Mahomes, barring Mahomes just turning it around crazily. It's not going to be Joe Burrow. It's probably not going to be Lamar Jackson. I do think Stafford's in the conversation. I think Dak Prescott's also there, but those guys need to have the team success to get there. Baker Mayfield has that, and I think he's probably in the conversation for that award. Top 5 quarterback, I still would take a couple quarterbacks over him long term. Like a healthy Joe Burrow is better, Josh Allen's better, Lamar's better. I still think Mahomes is better. Jaden Daniels, Stafford, those guys can also be considered better, but Baker Mayfield is right there in the conversation. So is he top 5? Top 5 this year? Sure, no doubt. Jordan Love has been a top 5 quarterback this year. He's top 5 in every major category. This one is very interesting, and it's kind of hard to say because he did have a bye week this week, and I felt like had he played, it would have told us a lot about this Packers team and Jordan Love especially, because weeks 1 and 2, they were so dominant versus the Lions and the Commanders, and in the past 2 weeks, they've shown a lot of flaws as a roster, and I don't think most of the blame does go on Jordan Love, but that pick against the Cleveland Browns was not a good play on his end. But for the most part this year, he's taking care of the football at a very high level. He's put the ball in all the right places. They're running the ball fairly well. Behind an offensive line that's fairly banged up, I think Jordan Love's doing a hell of a job. So in terms of is Jordan Love a top 5 quarterback this year, I think the answer is probably yes. Because again, you're saying probably Josh Allen's in the top 5. I think Dak's playing at a top 5 level. I think Stafford's playing at a top 5 level. I think Jared Goff has responded well from week 1. I think he might be in the conversation. Baker Mayfield. I think Jordan Love's firmly there too. And of course, Daniel Jones of all people. So is Jordan Love top 5 this year? I would say he probably is. But granted, we also have not seen him play in over a week, so it's a little bit hard to tell. Whereas some of these other quarterbacks have actually gotten to play. So for now, I'll say yes. Next up, Indiana Jones, aka Daniel Jones, MVP. So in order to win MVP, I think there's a number of different categories you have to pass. Number 1, you have to have team success. Number 2, your statistics have to be very good. And number 3, I think you have to have a bit of a name. You have to get the media narrative on your side. Hence why we've seen guys like Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen, they've won the awards because they've had the team success, they've had the numbers, and they're big name guys. Everyone knows who Aaron Rodgers is, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, not Baker Mayfield, maybe Baker Mayfield this year, but Lamar Jackson. I think Daniel Jones has 2 of the 3 categories passed. Right now, they're 4-1. So yes, they have the team success down. Frankly, if the Buffalo Bills don't clean up their act, I could see the Indianapolis Colts maybe winning the AFC. Not predicting that, but maybe, you never know. When you look at the numbers, I think Daniel Jones has solid enough numbers. I don't think they're necessarily as good as other quarterbacks, but they're totally fine. He just needs a few more touchdowns. He's good. I think it just happens to be that I don't know if he has the big name, nor really the big city either. It's Indianapolis, guys. This is not, Baltimore or Buffalo or Dallas or anything like that. This is it's in Indianapolis. So there's a part of that. And I also just think more so than the location, Daniel Jones is not somebody who you think about when you think about MVPs. So yes, he's playing at a high level, and I do believe he should firmly be in conversations to possibly get the award. But in terms of actually winning it, I have a hard time actually seeing it. I think Pro Bowl is totally in the realm of possibility, maybe even All Pro if he keeps this up. We'll have to wait and see. I still think it's a little too early to go and say Daniel Jones, MVP, though. If he wins it, that would be freaking awesome. After Rico Dowdle's performance versus the Miami Dolphins, he should be the starting running back for the Carolina Panthers moving forward. So this is probably the biggest overreaction I've seen, at least in this hot takes video. I'm sure we have a couple other ones that are pretty big. This one is a bit of a spice overreaction that I think we need to see a bigger sample size of. I'm a Cowboys fan, so I can tell you from firsthand experience, Rico Dowdle is a good running back. He got 1,000 yards last year, and that Cowboys offense was horrendous. And, and their defense was probably just as bad too. Rico Dowdle was actually pretty good when he got carries later in the season. And so I think he should get more carries. Should he take over that RB1 role? We have to see this consistently, right? He had a huge game versus one of the worst defenses in all of football, 200 yards, multiple big plays. Yes, I think there's something clearly there, and his physical running style really works well within this offense. And so I do think he deserves more carries. But let's also not forget that Chuba Hubbard last year had over 1,000 yards and was one of the best running backs late into last year. So yes, you can make the argument Chuba played the first couple games, wasn't good. Rico Dowdle starts, he plays much better. I think we need a bigger sample size. I think I want to see 2 to 3 more games of Rico Dowdle playing at a similar level as he did versus Miami. And if he keeps playing at this level, then I think you have to have Rico Dowdle as probably your RB1. I won't be a big fan if this Panthers team decides to split carries between the two, especially if Rico keeps it up, but we'll have to wait and see. Rico has to prove it to me first in a bigger sample size than just one game versus one of the worst defenses in all of football. Sam Darnold is a top 10 quarterback. A lot of top 10s and top 5s so far on this one. Let's talk about Sam Darnold. You want to talk about somebody that is sneakily having like an incredible season this year? Sam Darnold's in the conversation. It wasn't pretty in week 1, but since then this offense has looked really freaking good. And Sam Darnold has looked really freaking good too. Against Tampa Bay, he was borderline perfect. He threw a pick on the last drive, but that wasn't his fault. I believe it got tipped. He's been borderline perfect the past couple weeks. Him and JSN have a great connection. The run game has been good. I mean, he's just been a great quarterback. So top 10 quarterback? Yeah, I definitely think he's in the conversation. Now, do I think he deserves to be an MVP or Offensive Player of the Year or anything crazy like that? Probably not, but man, he's having a really solid year, and I think he's been much better than what they had last year in Geno Smith. He's been exactly what this team wants and what they needed from him, which is to kind of be a bit of a game manager at times, but also when you need to make high-level throws, can you be a high-level passer? Can you turn into a Matthew Stafford here and there? And I would say so far, Sam Darnold has done that at a very high level. Ravens need a coaching change. So I talked about this a little bit in my reaction video that I uploaded yesterday. I do think this Ravens team needs to possibly look at it. I do think specifically they need to look at the defensive coordinator, Zach Orr, and figure out, what's wrong here. Can he turn it around? And if not, I do think they need to potentially make some changes. Look, Harbaugh has not had the success that this team is should have possibly had. These past few years, they have been Super Bowl contenders and they have not made it to a Super Bowl, nor have they really ever looked that great throughout the playoffs. And I think part of that is, on the coaching staff for not having his guys prepared for those big moments. I kind of want to give them some slack this year, especially these past few weeks, because they're missing their entire team. I mean, they're missing $160 million worth of players, quarterback, defensive players, offensive players. I mean, they're missing everything right now. So it's really hard to judge them these past few weeks. But even prior to the injuries, it was pretty clear this Ravens defense was just simply put not good enough. I think the offense has been fine all year long. Obviously, with Cooper Rush starting, that makes things a lot harder. But when Lamar was there, it was pretty good. But yeah, I do think coaching changes have to be considered right now, especially defensive coordinator. And frankly, you know, again, I do think Harbaugh has to be a little bit on the hot seat. Yes, I know he's a Harbaugh. Yes, I know he's a, you know, kind of a historic figure in Baltimore for what he's done for this team. But I also think you have to do what's best for the overall team, and that is to find ways to win games and continue to innovate. And I think maybe you have to start considering it, especially with how highly they were thought of prior to the season. They were a lot of people's #1 team in the entire NFL. Super Bowl predictions had the Ravens winning it a lot of the times. I had them in my, I think, top 2 of my preseason power rankings. So everyone thought very highly of this team. They're 1-4, and frankly, their season is borderline over at this point. So yeah, I think they have to consider it. Colts will finish with the #1 seed in the AFC, and Jones will finish second in MVP voting to Josh Allen. This is a very specific prediction. These are the type of hot takes I like, because this one is very specific. It doesn't leave any room for interpretation. He knows what he believes, and I frankly respect it. Now, we've already had the conversation about Daniel Jones winning the MVP, so I'm not going to go too far into that one. But the Colts finishing as the #1 seed in the AFC is sort of a conversation that needs to potentially be had. No, I still think Buffalo will win the AFC. Their schedule is very easy, and they're a very good team. I think the game against the Patriots was more of just a tough in-division matchup that happens occasionally. And I do think the Colts are a really good team as well. I just don't know if they're as good as Buffalo. So will they finish #1 in their division? I think right now the answer to that question is probably yes. Their division's not that impressive. Houston has gotten a bit on track. We'll just keep an eye out on that one. Let's see if they can continue this moving forward. But Jacksonville is a good team. We'll see what they look like tonight versus Kansas City. I'm not terribly worried about them. But yeah, I think the Colts will win the division. And man, you look at the AFC North, Baltimore is now a 4-loss team. I don't believe Pittsburgh's going to go into that one, you know, squeaky clean either. So I think the AFC North winner will probably be a 5 or 4-loss team. The AFC West is probably going to cannibalize themselves, and they're probably going to have a division winner with 4 or 5 losses. So I kind of do think if Indianapolis can at least keep this up, if they can finish the year with, I don't know, a 13-4, maybe a 14-3 record. I know that's very high thinking, but if they keep this up, they could win the #1 seed in the AFC. It's possible. I'm not going to predict it yet. We'll have to just kind of keep an eye on that one. But yeah, Jones second MVP voting? Maybe. He doesn't have the name though. Dak is a sleeper for MVP. And Dak Prescott is playing the quarterback position better than anybody right now. And if that defense can at least move to 25th in the league, the Cowboys are making the playoffs. I wanted to throw both those together because they're both basically saying some very similar things. Dak a sleeper for MVP? Yes. The issue with that is he doesn't have the team's success factored down. Now, that's not his fault. It's the defense's fault, right? So in order for Dak to win MVP, the Cowboys have to make the playoffs. And Dak has to be the reason why they make the playoffs. So that has to happen. And I just don't know if this Cowboys team has it in them. And it's not because I think Dak is not a good quarterback. I'm a Cowboys fan, so I love Dak Prescott. I think Dak is playing at an MVP level. The problem is this defense stinks. Yes, they played really good versus the Jets, but still, this defense still stinks. And the Jets offense absolutely stinks as well. So I just have a hard time seeing this team get to 10 or 11 wins this year, even despite the fact that I think this offense is of the caliber of a playoff team. So if Dak can't make the playoffs, then I don't think he has a chance at MVP. But if Dak plays the rest of the season like he's playing right now, stays healthy, continues to dominate, keeps winning big games, etc., and this team makes the playoffs, I do think Dak Prescott should firmly be in the conversation to potentially win MVP. But again, they got to make the playoffs. It's really tough. I just have a hard time seeing them. Now, if this defense can move to, as the guy said, 25th best in the league, maybe that's good enough. I personally think they have to be a bit more like 20th or 15th best in the league, and then Dallas can get in, because I just think there's some really good teams right now in the NFC. But yeah, I think, look, Dak is playing great. And it's unfortunate that this defense doesn't have it figured out. However, Max Crosby, man, hey, Dallas trade for Max Crosby? Why not? Why not? You need a pass rusher. Think about it. The Chargers are about to collapse, even with a softer schedule, and completely miss the playoffs. This is a tough one to think about, because in weeks 1, 2, and 3 was very impressive. big division matchups, the big victory over Kansas City. But since then, it hasn't been pretty these past few weeks. You had an ugly loss in week 4 to the New York Giants. And in this past week, man, you lost again in a Washington game that Washington kind of dominated you from the second quarter and beyond. It's clear the Chargers are just missing Rashawn Slater. It's so obvious that they just don't have that same run game without Rashawn, and also without Najee Harris too. They're clearly missing him as a player, and they're just dealing with a couple other injuries here and there. But man, it's weird. I don't really know what to say to fix this team, because I look at this defense, and I know they played bad versus Washington, but still, it's one of the best defenses in all of football. Quentin Johnston's playing well, Keenan Allen's playing well, McConkey's playing well, Herbert's looked pretty good. They're just missing Rashawn Slater, which is really weird. He's one of the few players at a position that doesn't get the football that is such an impactful starter that without him, the team takes a step back. And it's a shame because for the first 3 weeks, it looked like they were totally fine, but since then, they've shown some real flaws to their game. I don't know yet, man. Are they going to collapse? It's hard to say. Their schedule does ease up the next few weeks, but then it does get a lot harder down the stretch. I think they got to pick the pieces up and get on a bit of a roll here because they just lost the past 2. And frankly, their in-division grip over the AFC West is kind of slipping right now, especially if Kansas City wins tonight. But that is going to conclude this video. If you guys have any more hot takes, let me know in the comment section below, and I'll make sure to respond to you. Also, keep an eye on my community post after every single Sunday. I might be putting a post out for hot takes where you can be a part of the next hot takes video. Anyways, love you guys. Peace.